Some people might continue to join, but we're recording now, so everything after this moment will be available for anyone who's just jumping in or jumping in a few minutes late. So welcome everyone to your first career lesson. Super excited to see you all here. My name's Kathleen, and I am the program manager for career and professional development here at Lambda School. So my job is to build out all of the content, all of the curriculum that you get related to your career readiness as you go through Lambda School. And you may be wondering why we're talking about careers in week 2. You might be thinking like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even have my head wrapped around my track yet. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing for a job later on or what I'm going to be qualified for. That is totally okay. You should be in that spot. You should not be at the point where you're like, yes, I'm going to start applying to jobs today. In fact, I would strongly recommend that you don't do that. We start careers really early at Lambda School because for any of you who have ever searched for a job before, you know that it takes a lot of time. And so we want to prepare you with the skills, with the information that you need to jump headfirst into your job search after you graduate. And that does take several months to build up. And as you're learning your technical track and digging into that and doing projects with your colleagues in Lambda School, those things are going to take a lot of time, and it's going to feel really hard to find the time to focus on getting your portfolio website ready or updating your blog or getting your resume polished and ready to go. And so we split these things over the course of your time at Lambda School. So it feels like a little bit at a time, and you're just taking little bites out of your career readiness instead of trying to do it all at once, which can feel really overwhelming. So we start in week 2 to spread it out for practical reasons, but also just because careers at Lambda School is super important. I'm going to make an assumption here, and I know you're never supposed to assume things about other people, but considering what Lambda School's focus is, I am assuming that all of you are here to either get a new job or grow in your career or make a total career transition. And so we want to start focusing on that early on. That way you are ready to do that by the time you graduate and you're not spending months on the job search. So that's some background and context. We do career lessons every Monday morning at 8 a.m. And this will happen throughout your track coursework. When you go into labs, things are going to shift a little bit. The schedule will look a little bit different, and the schedule will look different in CS. But you can expect to be here with me or a member of the careers team every Monday morning from 8 a.m. to 8:45 just to kick off your week. And if there's a Monday holiday, there will not be a careers lesson that day. So if when possible, we'll try to reschedule it, but there's a little bit of flexibility built into the schedule just because Monday holidays are a thing, and there's more of them than any other day holidays. So just so you know what expectations are in terms of the schedule. And then every week you will have an assignment that reinforces what you've learned in the career lesson that week. So sometimes this will be really theoretical, and it might just be like applying what you learned in careers to a hypothetical situation, because certain things, like when we get into interviewing, if you don't have an interview scheduled that week, it's hard to do that practical application of applying what you learned in the lesson to an actual interview. But we'll have you kind of do a mock interview to prepare for that and get you ready for the real thing. Other weeks you will have an assignment that is like do cold outreach to somebody on LinkedIn, find somebody who works at a company you're interested in and reach out to them. And if the thought of doing that terrifies you, that's okay. We're going to dig into that. But whenever possible, the career assignment should give you the practical experience that you need to feel really confident going into your job search and confident in your ability to present yourself well, to talk about your skills well, to learn about your field in a way that will benefit you as you figure out what you want to do. So let's dive in. Just going to make sure there are no last minute questions in Slack from people confused about where to go. And I think we're all good. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. So folks should be able to see that. Can I get a thumbs up? You can see my screen? All good, great. Let's dive in. So the goals of today's lesson are for you to leave today knowing how we approach careers at Lambda School, what support that we will provide to you, and what we will expect of you in return. I also want to set some expectations for your job search and just get you start thinking about job searching priorities, just so you know what to expect. And like I said, every week builds on itself. And so we're going to dig into a little bit every week, but just having an overall view of what you might be able to expect in your job search, I think is helpful on the front end, just so when we do get to certain topics, you're not like, whoa, wait a second, this is totally not what I thought it was going to be. So hope to do a little bit of that today. So careers at Lambda School. And I touched on this a little bit before, but the reason we're talking about this now, some people might get contacted by recruiters or companies as early as a few weeks into Lambda School. And so we don't want to not talk about this at all and then have you get contacted by somebody and not know how to handle that opportunity. And there are ways that you can handle that opportunity. And we also want you to at least know where to go to get help, to ask questions. So if something does come up before you're ready for it and before you know how to handle it, you know where to go to get the help that you need to navigate that situation in a way that benefits you. Like I said before, career prep takes time, and it needs to be done over time. It'll be a lot less stressful for you if we're doing this every single week rather than trying to cram it all in at the end, even though on a practical level, some of that might make a little bit more sense. And it also takes time. The more time you spend, the easier it will be later. Job searching on average takes about 4 months, and that's just an average. So for some people it takes less, and for some people it takes a lot more. And so no matter where you're going to fall on that kind of time spectrum, we want to make sure that you are prepared and it's as seamless and as least stressful of an experience as possible. And we want careers to be top of mind. So we started early because we want you to be thinking about your careers the entire time as you're going through Lambda School. Like I said, I'm guessing that most of you, if not all of you, are here to make a pretty significant career change. And we don't want to save that for the end, because this should be something that you're kind of thinking about as you're doing projects during build weeks and during labs, as you're learning new technical concepts. And your instructors do a really good job of kind of incorporating the more practical aspects of what you're learning in their classes into how that would be applied in a real world job situation. So we want to be giving you kind of the careers context along with that to keep it top of mind. So you are not alone in your job search. We absolutely will support you. Some things that you can expect from Lambda School. The careers team will review your LinkedIn, your resume, your associated artifacts, which can include your portfolio, a blog, your app on the App Store. Depending on your track, your artifacts will look different. But the careers team will review those and give you feedback on them, so you're ready to put your best foot forward. We'll also work with you during interview prep. So if you have an interview coming up, you're going to get a lot of practical interview practice as you go through Lambda School. That's kind of woven into your technical courses. But if you need to prepare for a specific interview at a company, the careers team will be able to work with you on that, do a mock interview, prepare with you, make sure that you know what you need to know going into that. A big one is offer guidance in job offer negotiations. If you've never negotiated before, don't worry, you're not alone. A lot of folks have never negotiated. And so we want to make sure that you are getting what you are worth, and that you know how to navigate that process, because negotiations are just as much a part of the job search as it are interviews. We also have open office hours every day of the week, Monday through Friday. If you aren't already in the Career Help channel, I definitely recommend that you join that channel. And that's where the office hours are posted every day. And so if you have a one-off question at any point in the program, you can sign up to meet one-on-one for a short conversation with a career coach to get some help on navigating whatever that question is. And then once you get your first job, of course, we hook you up with some awesome swag just to congratulate you. And so you have some physical emblems of your time at Lambda School. What we won't do for you is be 24/7 access. So if you get a email on a Saturday morning inviting you in for an interview, a career coach is not going to be online on the weekend to help you with that. So they'll definitely be online Monday to help you with that, but 24/7 access to career coaches is unfortunately not something that we can offer. We can't guarantee that you will get a job or give you a job. And this ties into the last bullet of we can't do the work for you. So if you are putting in effort to your job search, if you are driving it and taking a lot of initiative, then we will do everything in our power to make sure that you get as many interviews as possible, and we will work with you until you get a job. That said, you need to put the effort in. You need to own your search, because ultimately you're going to be a lot happier. And there's things that we can't do. We can't go into an interview and interview for you. We can't build out your portfolio for you or learn for you. So these are things that you need to be putting effort into as you're searching. And if you do that, I cannot promise that every single person will get a job, because I am not a fortune teller and I do not know that for a fact, but I have never heard of a student who is putting in a ton of effort who didn't get a job, because we really bend over backwards to help people get hired. We just need to see the effort and the focus from you as well in order to do that. Some other resources that you'll get related to your job search, and these come later on in the program, so you won't have access to these right now, but they kind of come in as you need them. We are really excited to have just launched a mentorship program, which is great. We just matched our second group of students with mentors, and by the time you are approaching the end of Lambda School, we expect this program to be really well fleshed out, which is super exciting. And we pair people with mentors who are in their local area or as close to their local area as possible, or who live in an area that you're interested in relocating to, and who also work in your field and meet any other preferences that you might have. And they're designed to really help you build your network after you graduate and provide job search guidance, provide more technical guidance and support. They can connect you with their network in order to help you find a job. And their role is to be a mentor on, more of like a professional development level, but also really to help you get a job. And we make that really clear to them. So this is a great resource to kind of get access to somebody in the field. Labs continuing education happens after CS. So after you're done with the coursework, you will go into labs continuing education, basically until you get a job. And Lab CE is great because we see that students who take even just 1 week off of coding or designing, their chances of getting a job in their field drop by 50% if they take a week off. And so we do not want that to happen. You need to keep coding. You need to stay active. You need to stay active in your job search and building your skills and applying your skills. And Lab CE builds that in, so you don't have the option of just like taking a break. And you're going to be really tired after you graduate from Lambda School. You're probably going to want a break. And we are not going to let that happen. Obviously, you can do what you want to do. If you leave, you leave. But we will make it really hard for you to do that. And we want to keep you engaged through Lab CE. So you'll be doing guided projects in your career search. You'll get a lot of career-focused content for about half of the day. And then the second half of the day, you'll actually be working on a project with your peers to keep your skills sharp. So we call it Labs Continuing Education because it's similar to Lambda Labs, which you'll do after your track, in that you'll be working on projects with groups to apply the skills that you've learned to real world problems and situations. And so we do that to keep your skills sharp. We do that to keep you focused on the job search. And just so you're with a community of people who are also job searching and, going through the frustrations of trying to start their first career, which, it can be a tough process. So if you're staying together with your peers, it just makes it a lot easier and a lot more fun and enjoyable. And then a huge resource that we have is hiring partners. Over 3,000 companies have contacted us and worked with us to interview or hire a Lambda School graduate, which is amazing. So we have a list of companies that are specifically looking to hire Lambda grads, and our partnerships team is constantly going out trying to find new connections all over the United States to help alumni get hired. And so once to get access to our hiring partners, you'll need to meet a few expectations in terms of you'll need to have your resume ready, your LinkedIn will need to be up to date, you'll need to have passed several mock interviews, you'll need to have a solid portfolio or other artifacts to highlight what you've learned so you're ready to present yourself in the best light possible. But we'll connect you with them. We'll provide you with interviewing support and preparation so you can go in and make a really stellar first impression. So this is a huge resource that takes a lot of the burden of job searching off of you. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be searching and applying to jobs on your own, but it makes it a lot easier when you kind of have this inside access to partners. So I've touched on this a couple times, but job searching can be really tough. It can get tiring. It can be demoralizing. If any of you have ever been in a long search, you know how hard it can be. I remember I'm from Boston originally, and I live in the Bay Area now. And when I moved out here, I quit my job in Boston, and I didn't have one here. And I was networking from Boston. I knew a few people in the Bay Area. I felt pretty good about the effort that I was putting in before I moved out. And it took me almost 9 months to find a job when I was moving out to the Bay Area. And, I was thinking in my head, like, oh, it's a great job market. I'm not in tech, but, I have a college degree. I have a few years of experience under my belt. Like, I was trying to make a career change and get into education because I was working in healthcare before, and I knew that wasn't what I was passionate about. But, I knew so many people that I felt like I was in a pretty good place. And I ended up having to do another job for a while just to pay the bills. The cost of living in the Bay Area is no joke. But it took me a really long time. And looking back on that, I realized there's so many mistakes that I made in my job search that could have been resolved by just like thinking about it a little bit more critically. So setting goals is huge, and it might just seem like a nice little detail that you can do, you cannot do. I really strongly recommend that you have your own goals for your career because it can make all of the difference. So each week we'll have a theme and we'll have an associated assignment to go along with that theme to help you move forward in that aspect of the theme for the week. But depending on your previous experience, I really encourage you to take the assignments to the next level so you're challenged. And I recognize that some of you might be coming into Lambda School with years and years of professional experience. You might have 20 years of experience in the corporate sector under your belt, and you're just trying to make a career change. While others, you might be fresh out of high school and have no professional work experience at all, and all of this is brand new to you. And so with the careers assignments, we try to make them broad enough that they can apply to anyone. But you might find that your LinkedIn already is really well built out and you have a lot of contacts in your network and you're already going to networking events and you're active in that regard of your career development. If that's true, then great. And when we get to that week, I would encourage you to think about ways that you can be more strategic and more deliberate about how you're networking, and just think about ways that you can challenge yourself with that and take it to the next level. Goal setting should be things that you don't feel super confident in. So if there are areas where you're like, I hate networking, I never want to go to a networking event, I feel super anxious in a crowd of people I don't know, like that sounds like a nightmare to me. That's a really good indicator that you should try to go to networking events and make yourself super uncomfortable. I promise the worst thing that will happen is it will be awkward. You're not going to get hurt. You're not going to ruin your life forever. So I really encourage you to lean into those areas of discomfort as opportunities for growth. And goals can be a great way to do that. So we'll get more into goal setting later on. And a lot of you have done goal setting in your lives before, but start thinking about this week, and you don't have to do anything with this yet, but just start thinking about some of the things that you know are opportunities of growth for you, and think about goals that you can maybe set related to that. And I'll say this a million times, but the more you do now, the less you'll need to do later. So especially now when we're still kind of early on in program where things are probably starting to feel hectic, but maybe aren't quite as busy as they'll get later on. If you have free time in your week, do research, learn about the field, Google different companies that have jobs in the track that you're studying with Lambda School. Start exploring LinkedIn, like figure out how to use it. And we're going to get into how to do all of these things in later lessons, but there's nothing stopping you from exploring that now. So just get curious and poke around and see what's out there. So now that you know a little bit more about careers at Lambda, I want to set expectations for the tech field as a whole, and what you can expect at different size companies, what different types of companies exist, at least at a high level. So you can start thinking about what types of companies you might want to work at. And this might be something you've thought about and you're like, yes, I know I know the specific company I want to work for. I know exactly what division I want to work in. And I've already started talking to people there to help me get a foot in the door. That's great. And I know that a lot of others here are like, I don't even know what I could qualify for. I don't even know what type of companies exist. Like, I don't know why I would want to work at one type of company over another. I don't even know like what job title I could search for in order to get started. So that's, both of those situations are totally fine. So I'm just going to kind of go over what to expect at a high level from different types of companies, so you can get a feel for what might be a good fit for you and where you want to focus your energy when you're searching. So at a startup, hopefully we've all heard of startups. If you watch the show Silicon Valley, that is, I would say, not entirely an inaccurate representation of what startup life is like, at least in the Bay Area. I can't speak to the rest of the country. But what to expect at a startup is they're small. They tend to be under 100 employees. Sometimes they have larger startups that grow really quickly, but are very much still in startup phase. So the size isn't always 100% accurate, but you can expect it to be smaller. It's a fast-paced environment. You very much learn by doing. And the great thing about working at a startup is that you get to do a lot of different things in general. You get to wear a lot of different hats, do things outside of your job description, and really go above and beyond. Your work is more likely to be directly tied to the company's success. So this means that there's going to be a lot more pressure on you. You're likely going to have a bigger workload than if you were at a more established company. But it also means that there's a lot more opportunity for learning and growth, which can be great. So if you're a hustler, startup life might be a good fit for you. Job security is not always as stable. You're working at a young company. They might not have any sort of revenue stream yet. They might be 100% reliant on investment funding, which means that if things aren't going well for the company, you're at a greater risk for losing your job than at a more established company. The things that you need to be successful in a startup, you need to be a self-starter, you need to be adaptable and flexible, you need to be able to pivot on a moment's notice if priorities change, and you need to be able to balance a lot of different priorities in a fast-paced environment. So if you like stress, if you like moving a million miles an hour, and you like constantly jumping from one thing to another, that could be a really good environment for you. Folks who prefer a little bit more predictability and a little bit more stability, or folks who have families and it's really important to you that you're at work from 9 to 5 and outside of work you are not thinking about work. I'm not going to say don't look at startups, because everyone is different. These are just kind of some themes that you can expect. So if you need a really strong work-life balance, startups might not be the first place where you want to look. Salaries may be lower just because, again, if they don't have any income yet, they might not have as much money to pay you, but they often make up for this by providing equity. So stock options, which if at a startup usually aren't worth anything. So it's kind of a gamble. But if the company does do really well, you could make a lot of money off of that later. And generally there's a lot of extra perks like free meals. They might do like team offsites and or have game rooms and things like that to kind of foster a more fun work environment, just to make up for the fact that they can't afford to pay people as much as, a Fortune 500 company. And the teams tend to be smaller. They tend to be pretty flexible in terms of what you're doing. You might not do exactly what your job description says. And the culture at these companies tends to be pretty casual. So when you see the pictures of people wearing jeans and hoodies and flip-flops to work, that's generally what you can expect at a startup. And I'm seeing a lot of questions come through the chat, so I'm not ignoring these. I'm just going to keep going through this, and then I'm going to take time at the answer to address them. So feel free to keep dropping them there. If you have more general questions, I would also encourage you to drop them in the Slack thread, just so your peers who aren't here can benefit from those later. The recording doesn't capture the chat, unfortunately, only the screen. Mid-sized companies. So these are more established companies, tend to have between 100, 500 employees. They have more structure than a startup. They have more shared responsibility. So it's a little bit clearer what you are doing at a mid-sized company. Your role is going to be a little bit more clearly defined than at a startup, and you can expect a little bit less pivoting. Mid-sized companies usually have established systems for things like benefits and promotions. You can go into an HR manual usually and see like, okay, I'm currently at a level 2. If I want to be a level 3, then these are the things that I need to do in order to get promoted. And along with that, because there are more people there and the teams are going to be larger, there tend to be opportunities for mentorship. Which you certainly can get at a startup, but smaller companies just have fewer people, and that means fewer folks for you to connect with to get mentored, which can be a really awesome thing to have when you're starting out in a new career. Mid-sized companies are usually in a position where they might not be totally profitable yet, but they probably have a revenue stream, and they're probably more established and more confident about the future of the business. So they can offer more competitive salaries and more competitive benefits. And on the flip side, you might see some of the perks of startups start to drift away. So you might be less likely to see, sponsored happy hours, or you might not get as many stock options with an offer. Not necessarily true, but sometimes those things start to kind of pare back a little bit. And another benefit is that they can be more stable than a startup. Obviously, no job is guaranteed. People can get laid off from companies that are huge and have a presence all over the world. So job security is never a 100% guarantee, but you're going to generally find more stability at a mid-sized company than at a startup. And culture can really depend on where the company is based, on what they're focused on. I've seen in general in tech, there is definitely a trend towards more casual. But if you are working in a tech role at, say, a financial institution, then you might have to, there might be a more conservative culture just because that's what the field is like. So it'll really depend on the company and what they do. And then finally, a corporate-sized company is one that has over 500 employees. And so these companies are good because they tend to offer the best work-life balance. They tend to be less intense than smaller companies. But depending on what your priorities are, this can be a challenge because you might just feel like, just another employee. You might not feel like you as an individual can have a huge impact on the company. Which can be good because it takes the pressure off of you as an individual. But for somebody who wants a lot of responsibility and pressure, you might not find, that dynamic to be as rewarding. Larger companies tend to have more competitive salaries and benefits and more processes around like earning and accruing PTO. A lot of times startups offer unlimited PTO, and like that's one of the perks and the value adds that they have. That's harder to manage when you have over 500 people working at a company. So you can expect more established processes around that. Hiring processes can take longer and roles may be more competitive. So if there's a larger company, more people are going to have heard of it than a small startup that is, just getting their business off the ground. So if you've ever applied to a company and your resume has gone into an abyss and you've never even heard back to confirm if anyone got your resume, that experience can be more common at a larger company. Not to say that can't happen at a smaller one though. Teams tend to be more structured. There tend to be really strict hierarchies and very clear paths for growth. And it's also good because there tend to be a lot more job openings. When you have a company that is larger, people are going to be kind of coming in and out of roles at a more frequent pace than at a startup where people, there are only 50 or so roles that are even available in the company. And when you have 500, it's more likely that people are going to be leaving at a more regular interval. So you'll have access to more opportunities. And larger companies also have great opportunities for mentorship. A lot of them have kind of established mentorship programs, or they might have other established staff groups where you can connect with other folks who share experiences or identities with you. A lot of larger companies have things like affinity groups, which is great for connecting and building your network. And you might not get as much of an established structure around that at a smaller company. And name recognition with larger companies is a real thing. When people look at your resume and they see a company that they know, and that's a well-respected company, it can really give you a boost early in your career. So that is a benefit. And the work culture, just like in mid-sized companies, will really depend on what the company does. So more traditional fields like, like insurance or banking or healthcare might have a slightly more conservative culture versus, a startup, a tech company that is doing, that makes software or something like that. I'm thinking of like Salesforce, which is a huge global company, and it's still super casual despite the fact that they have tens of thousands of employees all over the world, because they still operate in a very kind of casual, laid-back market. So before moving on, I just want to catch up on the chat here, just to make sure I'm not missing any key questions on this. Awesome. Seeing some networking happening, which is great. Harrison, you asked, are startup salaries generally over the 50K mark? The answer to that really depends. So it depends on what market you're in. So if there's a startup in like a lower cost of living area, so I'm thinking about like if there's a startup in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I don't know if that would be the case. So you might be making under 50K at a startup, depending on where it is. In the Bay Area, startup salaries for technical roles, generally, yeah. I don't want to say every single one. And it depends on what you're doing. If you're kind of, I think sometimes like office admins might make less than that at a startup, but technical roles rarely would make less than that, just because you still need to be competitive with the local market. So the answer to that question is it highly, highly depends. Generally, yes, but I don't want to say always yes. But I would say if you're in a technical role, you could expect to be making more than that at a startup. In higher cost of living areas, quite possibly less than that at a startup in lower cost of living areas. Wenjing said, I think interviews could be harder for some startups rather than big companies because they really want to find the right employees. Yeah, that can be true, especially when you're smaller. An individual employee makes a much bigger difference than at a larger company. So if you hire the wrong person, that person is going to it's going to be very clear that they're the wrong person for the job in a much more noticeable way than at a larger company. So that is true. The interview process might be harder. It might just be less competitive, though. There might be fewer people going in for the same opportunity. So I'm not going to say that the interviews are harder or easier at one company than another. But when you're going up against 20 people, it's just going to be more challenging to stand out than when you're only going up against 5 people. But yeah, that is true. And that's a very great point. Maddie asked, how do I even find a startup? Networking. Yes, you can network. You can just Google startups in wherever you live and see what's there. I think networking is the best way. There are some job boards that are specifically for startups. So I'll share some links in Slack after this lesson, just to kind of give you an idea of where to start if you want to start learning. And yeah, Janet said, go to VC websites. That is very true. VC stands for venture capitalist or venture capital, and they fund a lot. And that's usually where startup funding comes from. So yeah, if you go to VC websites, you can a lot of times find what different companies they're funding and what jobs they're hiring for. Great. Just scanning for some more questions. Thank you, Vital. Moving talks to Slack, appreciate it. Cool. Great. I think Marlo asked, what about coding tests? Yeah, a lot of jobs will have a coding test as part of the interview process. And you'll have opportunities to prepare for this and practice this in like a really, in a very like hands-on way. So don't worry about that yet. But yes, you will very likely, if you're interviewing for a developer role, need, or data science for that matter, will need to do some type of coding evaluation to show that you have the skills needed for that job. But we will help you prepare for that. And then Carrie asks, is it more difficult to get hired at a more established company such as Netflix from out of Lambda? Yeah, Netflix has a great reputation for being an awesome company to work at. So I would say it's hard when you're starting out in the field, regardless of whether or not you're coming from Lambda or another boot camp or a four-year university. When you don't have a ton of work experience, it can be tough to get into more established companies. And to use your example of Netflix, like I mean, I don't know how many applications they get in a day, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get thousands of applications a day. I think Google gets like 10,000 applications every single day. And so it can be more difficult to get hired at more established companies as a junior in the field, period. That said, Lambda School, I don't know if we have a relationship with Netflix. So we definitely have relationships with other established companies. And so that can help you get a foot in the door. So I wouldn't rule them out as an option entirely. But yeah, larger companies can just be more competitive. And when you don't have a ton of work experience to kind of show what you can do and show that, you know, other companies have hired you to do something in the past, it can be harder. So I wouldn't say it's harder at Lambda versus another program, but yes, it will be harder at a more established company when you're starting out. All right. And then I'll get to Slack after I'm done with the lesson to answer any questions there. So thank you to everyone who's posting your questions there. Moving on, keeping realistic expectations. And I want to touch on this, not to kind of crush your hopes and dreams, but just to level set what you can expect in your search. It is very unlikely that your first job will be your dream job. And it's a stepping stone. It'll help you get to your dream job. And that's something that you can continue working towards, but you're very likely not going to get the job that you picture yourself staying at for the rest of your life as your first opportunity. That said, you certainly could. It's not impossible, but I wouldn't have that be your goal or the thing that you're working towards exclusively anyway. You should be working towards other opportunities and not setting yourself up for disappointment if you don't get that opportunity that you really want. By all means, go for it. But treat your first job really as like an opportunity to learn, gain a foothold in the field, and build up your resume and your portfolio. Being targeted in your search is important. You don't want to be so open that you're not narrowing it down in terms of like what type of job you want, what type of field you want, where you want to work. But you should also be open. So don't only focus on a single type of job and not be open to any others. If you get an interview, I always say, go in for the interview. You never have to accept a job, and treat that interview as a learning opportunity. You never know. You might interview somewhere and be like, actually, I didn't think I was interested in this company, but learning more about it, I'm super excited about it now. So it's never a bad thing to get more interview exposure and practice. So be open to anything. And a lot of you will start getting contacted by recruiters, especially as you go through Lambda School. So you might hear about companies that you never would have considered otherwise. And I say it's always worth it to look into them and just see what they might have to offer. Willingness to relocate can open a lot of opportunities for folks who live in areas where there isn't a strong tech economy, who are in more rural areas. I know relocation isn't an option for everybody. You might have families or other local commitments or ties to where you live that make this really hard. If you are in a position to relocate and you don't live near a strong tech market, being open to this as a possibility could open up opportunities. So I would just kind of think about whether or not that's something that you could do or would be willing to do as you're researching job opportunities, as you're thinking about your career steps. And going off of that, there are remote jobs. They're harder to find. And they're not ideal for your first job in the field just because it really helps being in person with somebody, with your manager, with your team, to get feedback, to build relationships, to get mentorship. And when you're working remotely, it's harder to get those things. And I can speak as somebody who is working remotely currently. Everyone at Lambda does. It can be really hard sometimes. And I have almost 10 years of career experience, and it's still a challenge for me to connect with my coworkers and feel like I'm getting the input from my peers that would really help me do my job well. So it's not impossible. It's just more challenging and requires a lot more effort. Stay in your first job at least a year to build your credibility. This is really important. If your resume shows that you're moving from job to job, especially early on, that can be a red flag to future employers. Obviously, if you're miserable in your job or you're doing a job that was not what was advertised to you, then that's a different situation. And I would never recommend that you stay in a job just for like professionalism's sake if you're miserable. But if your first job isn't what your dream job is, and like you don't love it and you know that you want to move on from it eventually, but overall you're learning, you're growing, you're getting support, you're not super unhappy, just stick it out for a year, because that really does a lot for your resume, and it could be worth it for you later on, because you'll have access to more opportunities if employers see that kind of consistency. And then rejections, they'll happen. I don't want to say that most of you will get rejected, but probably most of you will get rejected or not invited for an interview at the very least from a job, like at least one job that you apply to. And it can be really hard. It can be super demoralizing. I'm not going to say that it's not a big deal, because it can suck. And I've been rejected from jobs that I really, really wanted, and it was awful. You will move on. You will get another job. You will find another opportunity. Use them as a learning experience, and don't let it define you as a professional, which is easier said than done. But they happen, and a lot of times you might get rejected from a job, and then you hear about another job that you realize that you would love way more than that other job that you thought you wanted more, a month prior. So try not to internalize it too much. And then when you're thinking about your first couple months on the job and how to be successful, I always recommend thinking of the first 3 to 6 months on a job as an extended interview. Every single day, you need to prove yourself and work extra hard to build trust. And as you build your career experience, as you gain more experience on your resume and you build your skills, this becomes easier as you go on, and you'll kind of have more trust up front at a new job when you have, 5 years of experience versus when you're first starting out. But with your first job, it's really important to kind of treat that as an ongoing interview. Be super open to feedback. Seek out feedback if you're not getting it. Work really closely with your team. Learn everything you can. Just be a sponge, and check in with your manager regularly to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to be successful. Mistakes are totally okay. Everyone makes them. Just try to avoid making the same one twice. Take notes, ask questions to avoid them when possible. But it's okay to make a mistake. Just learn from it. And chances are when you're first starting out, you're not going to have so much responsibility that a mistake will, send the company underwater. So hopefully anyway. So lean into taking some risks and be open to making mistakes. Just don't make the same one more than once. I touched on this before. Feedback is super critical. We're going to talk about feedback in either next week or the following week's lesson, just about how to deliver and receive it well. It can be a stressful thing for some people, but it's super critical. Some of the most important kind of realizations I've had in my career have come from feedback from my colleagues who took the time to help me grow. So feedback is critical. Ask for it if you're not getting it. A lot of companies don't do feedback well. So be proactive in asking for it. You want to build relationships. You don't want to be spending 2 hours a day at the foosball table, or, going to happy hour at 3:00 in the afternoon when you still have a mountain of work left to do for the day. So focus on building relationships. Just be aware of how you're doing it and how much time you're spending socializing. Going along with this, a lot of tech companies will have beer in the fridge, or they'll have happy hours, or some of them even have like kegs in the office and things like that. So if you drink, just limit yourself, especially in the first couple months. You don't want to be that employee. And sometimes tech companies, they can have a drinking culture. If you don't drink for whatever reason, I hope this goes without saying, don't feel pressured to drink because your colleagues are drinking. That is totally up to you. And if you do choose to, just be responsible about it. Not trying to sound like your mom, but it can be easy to fall into peer pressure. And then avoid asking for PTO in the first 3 months, except for emergencies. If you know you have a trip planned or something, a commitment scheduled before you accept a job, just let the employer know about that. And otherwise, you want to try to be there as much as possible. So after 3 months, it's fair game to ask for time off. But even if you have unlimited PTO, you don't want to be asking for a week or two off in only your second month of work, because that's already like a 1/6 of your time at the company so far. And it just doesn't make the greatest impression about your reliability or your presence. Some general tips for success. You should all have a Gmail email using the format, some variation of this format. It can have numbers in your email. It can have like an underscore or whatever, but it should be some variation of your name. So if you have that Yahoo account that you made when you were in like 6th grade, that's like soccer star 1998 with like a bunch of symbols or something in it, it's time to get rid of that and use something that's just your name. Even better if you have your own website domain that you can use for your domain name, but that's not necessary. Gmail's fine. Feedback, you'll get a lot of feedback here. Use it. We'll talk more about how to deliver it and receive it if this is a new concept to you, but please lean into feedback. It's super important. Career assignments can feel like an easy thing to deprioritize when you're going through your tech content. And so it can be easy to say like, oh, I'm just not going to do this week. I'll do it later. But you're going to have to make these things eventually. You're not going to get less busy as you go through Lambda. If anything, you're going to get more busy as you go on. So I really encourage you to do your career projects when they're due, and you will need to have done them in order to move forward in the program at a certain point. So you can't graduate Lambda school without having all of your career assignments done, just like your tech assignments. And I said this before, but you are going to be a lot less stressed if you have them done on the front end. So I really encourage you to do them when they're due. I get a lot of feedback that it doesn't feel as important as the tech lessons. And I hear that and I understand where that's coming from. But just keeping your career goals in mind is really important. And career assignments can help you do that. So try to stay on top of them, and you'll save yourself a lot of stress later on in the program. Coaches are there to help you. You'll be working with coaches a lot more once you're actually in the job search. Don't ghost them. Keep us informed. If you're feeling demotivated or if you're struggling in your search, let us know. Let a coach know so that you can get the support that you need. Don't just disappear on them. People do this, and I think it's because they're demotivated or they're demoralized or their motivation has dropped. But coaches are here to support you, and they all have, they're all experts in the careers field and have a lot of insight and coaching strategies to help you work through that. So please stay in touch with your coaches. And similarly, let us know if you get a job. We want to celebrate you. We want to help you negotiate that offer to make sure it's one you really want and are excited about. So keep us in the loop so we can support you with that. And then code and design every single day when you're searching. I mentioned before that 50% of people who don't code for a week after they graduate people are 50% less likely to get a job if they don't code for a week after graduating. That number jumps to 80% if you take 2 weeks off. So keep those skills sharp, practice them. We'll give you opportunities to do that. But it's super important. And then finally, just trust the process. We have helped a lot of people get hired. We've made mistakes. We've seen graduates make mistakes. We get tons of feedback from partners about what they're looking for. And so we're constantly working on making this process better and make it as tailored to you and your needs as possible. So trust the process. It works, and it is there to help you. And if something isn't working, we fix it pretty rapidly. So if you have feedback, please share it. But we have a pretty good system for helping people get jobs. And we don't tell you to do anything that is not going to help you, or that is going to be a complete waste of your time. So for Friday, for your first career assignment, I'm going to drop some of these links in Slack, and they also will be in Training Kit. But start setting weekly goals for your job search. And submit whatever tool you use to organize. I have a tool that is in Google Sheets. You can use Evernote or any other type of organization tool that you use to organize your thoughts or keep track of things. You can use that, whatever works for you. Submit that to your PM on Friday, starting to think about what you can start doing now in your search. And that might just be as simple as somebody asked earlier about how to find startups in my area. It could just be as simple as identify 10 startups that are near me or in areas that I would be willing to relocate to. So depending on your familiarity, your comfort level with the tech field, with job searching, with careers in general, just think about some things that you're curious about and do a little research into them and set some goals. And then write out a paragraph describing your priorities in a company and what type of environment you think would be the best fit to you, and also submit this to your PM. For some folks, this might be something you've never even thought about before, and you might be like, I just need a job. Like, I don't even care what type, I don't care who gives me a job. I just need a job. And so I'm not going to be picky about what I want. But you deserve to be picky, and you'll have the opportunity to be picky. You are building these skills, and there is a huge demand for people with the skills that you're going to be building in the field. So you will have a chance to be more picky than maybe you've had to be in the past. So, even if it seems like a really big stretch to be super picky about what type of job you would want, think about it. Think about what your dream would be in a company, and what would be the most important thing for you to have, and what things would be really nice to have. So just have fun with it, and you can do a little bit more research into different perks and benefits that different companies offer to get an idea of what types of things might be super important to you. So I'm going to stop there. We have a few minutes left. And I want to take time to answer some questions. So I'm going to hop over to Slack to see what's come through there. Scroll through my 8 million channels to find this one. Okay. So does Lambda have hiring partners for the UX course? Yes. Yeah. So we do have companies. So a lot of our partners hire for different types of roles. So they might have a partner who's hired for web before, may also have UX roles. But yeah, the partnerships team sources opportunities for every track. So no matter what track you're in, they're working with partners to get job opportunities for that. And I think that answers Wenjing's question too for data science. Timothy asked for an example of networking events, like a meetup for coding. Yes, so meetups are one thing that you can do. Meetup.com and Eventbrite, both you can search for events that are happening near you. There are also online and virtual events that you can find through there. And you can also, some companies, depending, if you live in a city and there are a lot of tech companies there, it's not uncommon for those companies to host events where they, do like a tech talk, or they highlight a certain area of tech where they do a panel interview or something like that. So that's a great place to meet people. It doesn't have to be tech related either. There's plenty of networking events that are just kind of general opportunities for you to mix and mingle with people. There's speed networking events, which is like speed dating just for networking. And that can be fun, especially if you're more introverted, because it gives you a chance to connect one-on-one with people and there's more structure to it. So yeah, there's a ton of different types of networking events. If you Google, and we're going to get into networking a lot more later. If you just Google networking events near me and see what comes up, you might find some cool opportunities. If you live in an area, in a more rural or remote area that doesn't have those types of events, there are also online events as well. And like Facebook can be a great place to find online communities. Reddit's a great option. LinkedIn groups is another great place to find people to connect with remotely. So you don't have to go to in-person events to benefit from networking. May asked if I recommend partnering with or staying away from recruiting agencies. That's a great question. So staffing agencies can be, what a staffing or recruiting agency does is they work with companies to fill job recs at those companies, but they work for their own agency. And so you might be working with a recruiter who is working with, a dozen companies trying to fill those roles. And the recruiter does the job of finding candidates for the company. And usually the way it works is either you'll be an employee of this recruiting agency and they'll pay you, and the company pays them, and the recruiter kind of usually negotiates a rate. So if the company is willing to pay you, let's say $30 an hour, the recruiter might negotiate a 50% markup. So then the company pays them $15 an hour for every hour that you work. And so it saves the company money, because usually you don't get company benefits when you do that. And it can make it a little bit easier for you because you have a recruiter doing the work of job searching for you. And it can just be easier to get your foot in a company in the door at a company that way. I don't recommend not partnering with them. I recommend just being cautious when working with recruiters, I've worked with a lot of recruiters. In a previous job, I was supporting people getting jobs after they graduated from a tech training program that I used to work for called Year Up. And so I worked with a ton of recruiters who were amazing people. They would work so hard to get my candidates jobs and really go above and beyond to make sure that they were happy in those jobs. I've worked with other recruiters who you could tell that they were just trying to make a commission. A lot of times the base pay for a recruiter is really low, and most of the money they make is from getting people in jobs. So it can feel kind of like a churn. So I would just be aware, be really strong about advocating for what you want when working with a recruiter. And yeah, just be wary of it. I wouldn't say don't do it, but there can be pros and cons. Is there an official perspective or position on freelancing while job searching? Michael asked this. No, there is no official perspective. I would say if you want to do this, great. And it can be a great way to build up your resume and your portfolio, keep your skills sharp. I would just say don't let it distract you from job searching. Freelancing is great, but your income obviously depends only on the projects that you have. You're responsible for your own healthcare and benefits. When you're an independent contractor, tax rates cannot be super favorable for you also. So I wouldn't say that freelancing is a good thing to do instead of working full-time, unless it's really the right fit for you based on your needs and your lifestyle. So while job searching, sure, go for it. Just don't let it distract you from your search.
Cool, thanks.
Oh yeah, you're so welcome. Elvis asked, located in Toronto. Yes, we have hiring partners in Canada as well. Brittany asked, if we have a specific employer in mind, what would those first steps look like? So this is great. I don't know if you all have met Ryan Holdaway yet, also known as Holdy. He is on the partnerships team, and he does a lot of kind of investigating new partnerships. And so you'll see him regularly post in Slack, like, hey, what's a company you want to work for? DM me the name of it, or like post the name here in Slack, and we'll try to go after them. I wouldn't say that we can do this for every single company that every single person wants to work at, but if you have companies in mind, like definitely feel free to throw them out to Holdy, because he will, because he asked for this. So he posted about this recently. I'll try to find the post and I'll tag you in it. That way you can start bothering him there. So he's really open to that. I'm going to do one more question and then wrap up, because I know you all have to go into class in a few minutes, and you probably need to get a drink of water / use the restroom. But for remote work, what if you're a more seasoned professional, maybe switching careers? Could more career experience be not only helpful, but potentially more attractive to prospective employers? Yes. And yes, for sure. And I would say remote work isn't something that we say hands down no to for your first job. We just really strongly recommend against it. And it depends on how much you're switching careers. If you have been, working in IT, and now you just want to level up your skills and get more into like development, then maybe you have kind of the exposure to tech that you feel like you need in order to be successful in a remote role. In which case, like, that's fine. You know your needs better than anyone else. If you're totally switching careers though, from one totally unrelated job to another, I still think being in person could be really beneficial. And more career experience will always be helpful as you're job searching. And it will always be attractive to employers. But I think we recommend against remote work more for your own benefit than for, like the ease of finding a job or for like the company's benefit. So just think about your needs. And I'm happy to talk more about this too. Didn't get to answer all the questions. I will respond in Slack over the next hour or two. And this recording will be uploaded in Training Kit later today. And I'm going to post the assignment in Slack as well, so you know what you're doing for Friday. But if you have any other questions, definitely feel free to post them in the thread, and I'll respond as soon as possible. But thank you everyone for joining. Great to see all of you. Welcome to Lambda School. Super excited to get to know you over the next couple of months. And have a great day, everyone. Take care.